If you're someone who's been trying to figure out your purpose, make sense of your journey, or trust that your experiences are leading you somewhere meaningful, this episode is for you.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious, motivation, be audacious, innovation, be audacious, inspiration, be bold, motivation, be audacious.
The faith is character isn't learned overnight. And I want to encourage our audience right now that's listening. You may be going through the grind. You may be like Muhammad Ali, where you've been knocked down on the canvas, swing like a butterfly, sting like a bee. But it's just a matter of getting back up when life has really delivered a knockout punch to you. When it's really ingrained in our DNA of design. It's really ingrained in who we are. It's that internal gut feeling. It's that power of the subconscious. And when we speak these things on a quantum physical level into the neurological pathways of our subconscious, we awaken our subconscious to listen to that and we train it.
What if the things you've lived through weren't random at all, but part of a deeper design that's been shaping you the entire time? This podcast is all about helping you unlock your inner greatness and live your best audacious life. And today's guest is Caleb Matthews. He's a spiritual strategist, a dream interpreter, speaker, and founder of C-Link, whose work helps people discover their purpose, understand the deeper meaning in their lives, and walk more confidently in who they were created to be. What really stood out to me in this conversation was Caleb's passion for helping people see that their lives are not accidental and that even the valleys we walk through can shape the mountains we're meant to climb. So now that we've got you all set, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Caleb Matthews. Enjoy. Hey, Caleb, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Audley. This is great. And built into your name is Audacious Audley. That's what I thought of when I first saw your invitation. And I was like, this is great. Let's go for it. Thanks for having me on the show.
I mean, I don't know any other way. Now, it's funny. I've had people say to me, "Oh my gosh, the folks in the marketing department did a great job lining that up, and it's brilliant." And it just happened. It just and the things that just happened to me are a sign that they were supposed to be. And so, I can't take any direct claim for it. I will own it and say thank you very much. I do consider myself audacious, and it only makes sense that this is the Audacious Living Podcast. And so, thank you for your time. Much of what we encourage here and support is really that spirit of audacity and living sort of your best audacious life. And it's very much sort of in line with the work that you do, because you also encourage individuals to sort of, walk in their own path, if you will, and you encourage confidence and support that. You're a spiritual strategist. I'm going to have to get you to talk about what that is. That's the first time I'm hearing that, so you're going to have to fill me in on what a spiritual strategist does. But you essentially you're really in support of people. You're a dream interpreter as part of the work that you do as well. And so there's a lot to you, as well as the founder of C-Link, which I'm sure you will fill us in as well too. So you got a lot on your plate. And so maybe as a starting point, I'd get you to introduce yourself to our audience and talk about the work that you do and what has got you to the point that you're at now.
Ooh, that's great. Yeah, that's a fully loaded meal package, entree, meal, feast, whatever you call it. Yeah, it's been quite the journey for me to get to C-Link, where I am as my own boss, my own entrepreneur. I also run the itinerant Oasis, which I'm calling our audience from right now in beautiful San Jose del Cabo, Mexico, from my workspace condo, Airbnb/workspace, where people can just come, bring their headphones, bring their laptop, but everything else, all the gear, the desk, the lights, the microphone, I got it all. But that's one of the things that I run here as well. But the C-Link really was born out of my journey as a public speaker, an international motivational public speaker. Over the last 20 years, I started my public speaking journey when I was 18 years old in the dusty roads of Africa, all the way into orphanages and Bible colleges, open air crusades, radio from Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, all the way
Wow.
to the mountainous regions of the Philippines, down in Mindanao, down the southern parts. Most people get up to Manila and Cebu and those places where the vacationers go, but I went down to the south, which is more or less where the treacherous roads are. But that was really what began the speaking journey for me, was when I found my passion. Like I'm good at sales. I came from a 9 to 5 corporate
Right.
background for 10, 11 years. I got out of the corporate big core 9 to 5 world and just busted that bubble. But really my main passion beyond sales, beyond selling, a product, is actually selling ideas, which
Okay.
is for people to reach the DNA of their design. And that's what
Love
C-Link
that.
is all about, to reach the purpose to which you've been created by God, because everybody on this planet has a purpose somewhere. And that's where I like to pull and extract the C-Links in individual people's lives in their day by day and in the night season, of course, interpreting dreams and learning from history, learning from our ancestors, our forefathers, foremothers, and learning how history speaks. And then, of course, learning about entrepreneurship, which I call the I of R principle, the early years of entrepreneurship
Okay.
of renovation.
Ah. Well, I
Yeah.
got to tell you, the DNA of design, it sounds very, I just love it. I think that's a fabulous sort of approach to take. And I kind of want to know, what was the motivation? So again, you're public speaking, you started at a young age, broke in the space, wanting to inspire people, wanting to motivate people. With what you were doing then, is it similar to what you're doing now? Is it the same thing? Has it evolved? Has it changed? Or what's that journey been like? And then I kind of want to hear about what landed you to what you're at now.
Yeah, it's kind of evolved for sure. Like I began when I was 18 years old in the public speaking space when my parents, especially my mother's idea, got to get credit to mom, thanks mom, thought it'd be a great idea for myself and my father and family, brothers, to see the less fortunate places in the world, to see where people are in poverty, where people are having less than the Western world of the materialistic world that I was raised in Canada. I was
Hmm.
born a Canadian, of course, even though I'm a resident of Mexico, so I go back and forth between Canada and Mexico. But really, seeing the world at the age of 18 was a real eye-opener for me and for my parents, of course, and my family. But my mother, it wasn't foreign to her. Like she worked on a kibbutz when she was very young, when she was 18. Same age I went to Africa when she went to Israel, when she went to Israel and Palestine and worked in the Middle East and seeing the world through those lenses. So she thought when I turned 18 and my brothers, got to that place where, because they were like a year and a half apart, it'd be a good idea to see the world, especially these less fortunate places. And that's where the idea came from, to go to Africa, from my mother, of course. And really, I was homeschooled. So I got to go to Africa in February of 2006, was the first time that I went
Wow.
to East
Yeah.
Africa, to Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. And it was my first time public speaking in front of a live audience. Like I'd spoken at home to my family and, youth groups or just different people that were, yeah, at home, but not really to a live international audience of many people. And I want to say that one of the best things that trained me for fear of crowds and fear of public speaking, and I want to speak to our listeners right now, especially who are like, oh, wow, I want to get into public speaking and
Yeah.
I'm nervous and where do I start? Well, I started with my stuffed animals. I
Mm.
started with speaking to my teddy bear that I was given at birth. His name is Sammy. My dude, my buddy, my blue bear, my teddy bear. I don't have him with
Yeah.
me right now, but I practiced in front of my teddy bear and my stuffed animals as if they were a live audience
Love
before I
that.
went to Africa. So when I stood in front of the bishops and the churches and the pastors and the government officials and different people in different places, I just imagined that they are all stuffed animals. They're all my collection of stuffed animals, and I was just delivering the scoop right to them and giving them the C-Link. And that really just got rid of, okay, I don't have to, it doesn't have to be polished and perfect. It just
Right.
has to be passionate. And that's really where the journey began in that place. And then I was raised as an entrepreneur. So landscaping, my mother had a landscaping business called Back to Eden Landscaping, where she serviced many of the wealthiest clients in Calgary and Alberta and Canada, from the owner of the Calgary Flames, Murray Edwards, for hockey, to the owner of Jim Shaw, the owner of Shaw Cable, one of the biggest cable
Yeah.
companies in
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
Wealthy clients, and taught from a young age how to steward that environment and to treat that with respect, because it was going to launch me somewhere else. And without working in for the landscaping business, without working and making that money and
Mhm.
self-funding ourselves, because we self-funded ourselves to Africa. We didn't
Right.
have an organization or a ministry or anyone fund us. We funded ourselves through this non-denominational organizational work, and we made the connections. We had a friend who made us say, hey, here's our contacts to make the connections, but we
Yeah.
self-funded ourselves. And
Beautiful.
without those early years of entrepreneurship, the eye of our principle, I would never have reached Africa. I never would have reached Mexico where I am right now. I
Hmm.
wouldn't have gone through the 10 years where I was in the corporate world, because that itself is a story I want to get into as well too, because I spent 10 years in the corporate world where I had
Hmm.
to kind of put my public speaking on the shelf. Like I wasn't able to
Right.
do it full time because I was busy working 40 hours a week for telecom. And the telecom industry is one of the top salespeople in Canada, for TELUS, for the retail space in that
Right.
regard. So yeah,
Right. Right.
that's just a little bit of how it's evolved, but we can get more into that for sure.
Well, I will tell you that evolution process it's so important because in the moment, Caleb, you're faced with a circumstance, and I always say that we do the best what we have in the moment, right? We don't have the value of perspective to look back and go, oh, that makes sense, and here's the decision you make. You don't have that in the moment. It's the now is all you've got, and the beautiful part about that is when you do have that perspective and you do look back, you oftentimes see where all the dots connected, and you oftentimes see why it made sense to do what you did. And I had to go here to get here to get here to get here, or I wouldn't be here. But whereas you don't have that opportunity in the moment, you've just got to go with your gut, your instincts, your feelings. But in the end, they do all lead you to where you are. And so, even somebody, hearing a little bit about your origin story a bit and kind of, where you got started, it does sort of, it does not sort of, it does make sense. And so I certainly appreciate you sharing that. I'd love to hear what inspired the name Sea Link, and kind of how does it reflect your own spiritual journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sea Link for me is this concept of seeing the link in our day by day. That's where the
Mm,
idea was birthed from, of these little nudges that we all have, whether it's nature speaking to us, whether it is maybe a unique situation that you come across, I come across, oddly, our audience comes across, where, wow, that was very much like a parable, that life experience that I had in
yep.
that season of my life, or encountering a random person at the bus stop that started to have a conversation with that turned into a great friendship, or going to this beautiful exotic place or this place internationally where I learned something about myself traveling. Like these sea links that are
Hmm.
just more than just what meets the eye and the surface, but deeper beneath the surface of these parables that are communicated to us in the daytime, but also in the night season, in the dreamscape
Yep.
of seeing the link and understanding our dreams of the night season. Where this really birthed one from for me, where it came from, is really what I was raised in. That is the Hebraic method of dream interpretation.
Okay.
I'll say that again, the Hebraic method of dream interpretation and understanding how God speaks through dreams of the night season, how he spoke through dreams in the Bible as well as in history, and all these different intricate sea links that our ancestors and our forefathers and foremothers and of all the people that went on before us in history dreamed of in the night season, and of course these encounters they had in the daytime as well. So really, Sea Link was born from that biblical upbringing that I was brought up in, that there's more than just meets the eye. In fact, at
Right.
the age of 6 years old was one of my first vivid memories, was a dream that I had in the night season. And these were before the days of major cable television or Netflix or
Yeah. Yeah.
like crazy video games, or my family was pretty strict when it came to what we put in our eye gate. We didn't really watch movies per
Yeah.
se.
Hmm.
We did hockey night in Canada and watched hockey because that's what Canadians do.
Yeah.
And we got to see like Looney Tunes and some cartoons, but we weren't
Sure.
really into movies. So these vivid dream, metaphor, allegorical Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings adventures, when I started having these vivid experiences while I was sleeping in the night season, it caused me to question what are these sea links at a young age. And that's really where it's developed into my adult years and into my entrepreneurship years of the seeing the links in my day by day and why
Mm,
I'm extremely passionate about helping others reach the purpose to which they've been created by God. Because every single person on this planet, you and I included, everybody, all of our listeners, we've been created with that DNA of design that
absolutely.
nobody else has. The cool thing scientifically is, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that according to science, we cannot be cloned down to the 100%. There's always going to be that unique DNA strand
Sure.
that's only in you, Audley, that's only in me, Caleb Matthews, that's only in our listeners that cannot be fully cloned. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I agree with that wholeheartedly because I think there's a part of this that that we can't overlook, and it's the value of the individual experiences that we go through. So yes, our DNA, our cells, our structures are unique to us, but what's also unique to us is the perspectives we have on the situations that we go through, and some of these situations we actually grow through them. The other part about this too, which very much lines with we talk about these audacious choices we make in life, is two people will go through a situation, and one may see it and perceive it as a good thing, and one may perceive it as a bad thing. One may see it as an opportunity for growth, one may see it as an opportunity to be let down and the world is over. And so even that perspective and what that does for us individually, because if you grow through something, you're not the same person. You're just
That's right.
not. And so you go through the experiences that further refines me as to who I am and makes me even further unique, right? So yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% on board with that, and I agree. And I think that's the beauty of what life is, because now I have the opportunity, and I'll use this podcast right now. I have the opportunity with my unique perspective, with my unique viewpoint. I have the opportunity to share with others and enlighten them and enrich their lives and increase their perspective in some way. And that's the beauty of the sharing and what we do. And so, yes, I agree. That's what I agree with that. The scientists, I think they got that one bang on.
Yeah, it's the really this phrase, this terminology comes to mind, and you may be familiar with it. Many of our audience maybe may not be. It's called MPA, which stands for multiple perspective advantage. And most people, especially in our driven hustle culture and busy world, they lose sight. And I'm preaching to the choir. I'm saying to myself, we can lose sight of the bigger picture, the MPA, the multiple perspective
Yes.
advantage. And I want to use some American football as an example, since Sunday is the football day.
Sure.
And that is if I only focused as a player on the gridiron of the field, play by play, it's good to be present. But if I'm just looking at the battles and the struggle to go 1 yard after the other, I'm not going to see the bigger picture of the end zone. I'm not going to see the bigger
Right.
picture of the coach with the clipboard or my
Yep.
teammates on the sidelines. I'm not going to look up into the rafters and see that ring of honor that are in the different stadiums that honor all the people that played football before me that
Yes.
ran the race. And if I don't look higher, I'm not going to see the broadcast booth where the commentators have that bigger field picture of the field. And if I don't look higher than that, I'm not going to see the cameras before Sunday night football or Thursday night football that get the whole stadium and the parking lot and the whole city gridiron grid. And if I don't look higher than that, I'm not going to see the map of the United States. If I don't look higher than that, then I'm not going to see the galaxies and the stars and the planets. And if I don't look higher than that, I'm not going to see the heavens above all heavens where God is seated, where he's enthroned over humanity, where he holds every hair in my head that's on my head and every thought that I've ever had and will have in the palm of his hand before the throne of God. If I don't see that perspective, I can lose sight of the bigger picture because
Mm.
I'm caught up in the battle.
I think it's beautifully said. That's beautifully said, and I love that perspective. Something I'm curious about, given how young of an age, and you're how old when you sort of got on this track and started traveling and speaking? How old were you then at that point?
I was 18 and I'm 38 right now.
So at such a young age, to kind of have those experiences, they're not common, Caleb, and I think you know that already, and it's very very unique. What I'm curious about is how did those experiences at the young age kind of shape your world and how you saw things? Because you had a different, you did not have the typical 18-year-old viewpoint of the world.
Yeah, they shaped me forever to see that really life is very precious, especially when one is going through these countries like Africa and the Philippines,
Hmm.
where life usually ends a lot quicker for the average lifespan, and especially in these poor villages and these poor
Mm.
places. They don't have the average lifespan that the healthier Western world that has access to medicine and good food and
Hmm.
technology has. And really, it opened my eyes to see that, okay, this is just the beaten road. This is the wilds. This is the wilds of the wilderness of life. And
Yep.
all that to say is it opened my eyes to see that every day and reminder is a gift and nothing is guaranteed. And it reminds me of one of the lessons that one of my late mentors and very deep spiritual teachers that he taught me and my family, that he was one of our friends. And I know he's looking down from the cloud of witnesses right now. He's in this conversation. His name was Scott, wonderful man. And one of the things that he spoke over me and my family was be content with whatever state you are in, whatever state you are in, because that will propel you into the bigger picture of the impact and the imprint that you're going to make on individual lives. And to use that analogy and that example to answer your question, Audley, the state where I was in on these journeys, through every single journey, whether it be in Africa, the Philippines, Europe, Central America, on the radio, in person, in front of dozens or hundreds or thousands or millions on the radio in Tanzania after the 7 o'clock news. It was really to be content with the state that I'm in and not be too caught up with trying to get to the end goal, because
Mm.
we live in a culture where it says, oh, you got to be worried about, okay, what's the result? Like Burger King, like, give me my burger, give me my fast food. And that's not the way that character is developed. And that's really what I was raised in as a homeschooler, raised in a biblical background, raised in with these stories, but raised in with especially the school that I went to. One of the schools that I went to after I graduated when I was 18 is called Streams Academy. And it
Okay.
was a school of the art of hearing God's voice and understanding how to interpret dreams. And that was in New London, New Hampshire, in the east part of the United States, a little small town of 5,000 people. And the main emphasis before gifting was character. That's what my friend John Paul Jackson emphasized. He's also passed on as well too. And he talked about character before gifting. And that's something that I've carried with me
Mm.
through my entire life. And one of the examples he talked about was, say if he could hire one of two employees. You got one employee that's extremely gifted, 5-star gifting, but his character is only 1-star character. And then you have somebody with 5-star character, exceptional character, but 1-star gifting and needs that development. And his answer was he would always lean towards the person with 5-star character and 1-star gifting, because you can learn gifting, but you can't learn character overnight.
Hmm. Yes.
And that is what he
Right.
emphasized. And that's what God emphasizes in the Bible through all these history stories of Daniel and Joseph and a lot of the heroes of faith is character isn't learned overnight. And I want to encourage our
Yep.
audience right now that's listening. You may be going through the grind. You may be like Muhammad Ali, where you've been knocked down on the canvas, swing like a butterfly, sting like a bee. But
Yep.
it's just a matter of getting back up when life has really delivered a knockout punch to you, because it's not about the punch that was been delivered to you. It's how you get up. It's how we get up. It's how you
That's
get
right.
up from that being knocked down. And if anybody takes anything away from our conversation today, I'll say this: don't be discouraged by your character development season, because when we look in the Bible and we look in history and we look at the heroes of history that really made it, because history is my favorite subject in school. I don't know about you,
Okay.
but my favorite subject. And people that we celebrate, like Harriet Tubman and Winston
Yep.
Churchill and George Washington and Thomas Edison, these inventors and these historical giants, Rosa Parks and Mother Teresa, these people that are celebrated. Many people forget beyond the gifting, they had to start with character. They
That's
had to
right.
start with the years of being bashed and pushed down the dirt and crushed, because unless we are crushed, we cannot rise. And the depth, the proportion of the depth of our valley is proportionate to the height of our mountain. I just want to say that again. The depth of our valley is proportionate to the height of our mountain. So, audience, do not be discouraged if your character season feels like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20. I just feel like right now, for me personally, individually speaking, I'm just entering into this golden phase. I feel like that it's been a long haul for me and I have much more to learn. But that's the way it is in life and the way it is with God.
Mm,
Character, character, character before gifting, because if you have somebody who's extraordinarily gifted, but
yep.
they have terrible character,
Yeah.
it is going to be very hard for that person to learn good character. But somebody with exceptional character, but poor gifting, you can teach with that because they're an open
Yes.
canvas.
Of course.
Anyways,
And I think that a lot of what you said goes right back to the comment I made about our experiences and what they do for us, right? And
yeah.
okay, so yeah, we'll get beat down like Muhammad Ali. Do we stay down or do we get up? Like, do we keep going? Do we stop? And that feeds to the character that you just gave it a great, beautiful description of. These are the things that build our character. These are the things that help us to develop our character. It's these experiences, and that's why such a big fan of trying. Just try.
Yeah.
You don't know how it'll go. Sure, there's fears. Sure, there's uncertainties, there's doubts, there's suspicions. Absolutely. I acknowledge that those things are there. But at the same time, you have no guarantee until you actually try. And then I'll even take it a step further because I talk about, and there's something I call the fail forward advantage, right? Where failing gives you advantage to move forward if you embrace it that way and if you reframe your thinking as to what it can do for you. And so again, it does build a character. So 100% on side with everything that you're saying. I've heard you talk about the unseen side of life, and I'd love to kind of get a sense as to how did that fascination with that part of the life that's unseen, how did that develop for you?
Yeah, at the age of 6 years old, referencing there earlier, the first dreams that I had as a young boy of seeing vividly, okay, my nightlife is full of life. It's full of these codes, these maps that aren't just adventures to look at while I sleep, but they actually point to something. How do I know that? How do we know that? Well, let's leave some examples. I always like to use practicality
Hmm.
when I'm speaking about these
Hmm.
things, and that is when I was homeschooled, we learned of some of my brothers and I, my mother homeschooled me, my two brothers, all a year and a half apart, and we learned about some of these giants of history, names like Harriet Tubman, names like George Washington, names like Winston Churchill, of course. And Harriet Tubman, one of my great heroes of American history, she was a runaway slave and she ran from south to north through the Underground Railroad. And most of what the secular public school, sorry if anybody who might be offended by this, but the public school system, they like to say that Harriet Tubman got fortunate and she escaped and she was very fortunate to make her way through the Underground Railroad. Some brave people helped her to get to freedom. She came
Right.
back and led a bunch of other people to freedom, to Canada, to Pennsylvania, to Freedom Land. And that's the story. Well, that's only part of the truth. Yes, people helped her along the way. Yes, she was extremely blessed to get out of the clutches of death, but she wasn't alone.
Right.
God spoke to her in her dreams of the night season. It's actually documented. You can look it up on ChatGPT. You can look it up on YouTube. You can look it up in even the movie that came out called Harriet, which is a really good movie. I highly recommend it, Harriet Tubman. And she would have these experiences and these dreams while she was running from her captors in the swamps while they're after her with guards and shotguns and dogs looking to track her down and bring her back to slavery or
Mm,
even, like beat her or even kill her for trying to run. And she would have these vivid dream experiences where God would say, Minty, that was her nickname, Minty, go here. That house is going to be there on that street and that corner in that city. Oh, don't go to that house because that person's compromised. Don't go there. And she would follow her dreams as a roadmap all the way north because God had Harriet in the palm of his hand.
Mm.
And she wasn't alone on the road. In fact, Harriet Tubman is quoted as saying, you always looked after me, and even when I was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, I did not lose one. And that could be said of her. It's documented that every time she went back after she was free and she went to free people from slavery, she didn't lose one passenger. Not one person was lost. And she was credited to have gone between 11 and 13 different missions led by herself, nobody else with her, her on her own, and leading over 300 people on her own with God because
Wow.
she wasn't really alone. She had the Spirit of God with her. Jesus was looking out for her. I truly believe that. And, she would even have these hymns, these songs that she would
Yes.
sing when she would
Yes.
go back to the plantation and say, go down, Moses. And like she would sing these freedom hymns. When
Yes.
people would
Yes.
hear the hymns, they would drop everything and they would run because they knew it was their time to go. And that's what I'm talking about here,
Yes.
Audley. What we're talking about here, audience. These are the sea links that Harriet Tubman used. And the night
Mhm.
season is one of those sea links. And every person scientifically, here's a
Mhm.
scientific factoid, by the time that you and I reach 60 years of age, anybody does, will have slept 1/3 of our life. 1/3 of our life. 20 years of that 60 is spent in the dream realm, in the dream
Mm.
state. And therefore, I would ask myself this question growing up when my mother started teaching me, my brothers, about all this. If that's the case, then that means that it's not just words on a page or in a storybook for somebody else. That means since I'm flesh and blood like they were, that's for me too, because that is the way that God designed the human body, the construct,
Right.
spirit, soul, and body, because we all have a spirit, we all have a subconscious
Yep.
that's going on. And unfortunately, in our world today, there's a lot of media, a lot of distractions, a lot of noise that distracts us from the night season. And really, oddly, to answer your question from earlier, my fascination began at a young age, from 6 years old all the way to my teenage years and beyond as a homeschooler and eventually going to
Mhm.
Streams Academy and, of course, to Africa and to different works. And it's led me and my family in front of audiences of different kinds, whether they are audiences of faith-based people, of believers, of Christians, whether it is people in the New Age. Because one of the places that we got to go to many times is this great place in Salem, Massachusetts called Haunted Happenings. And it's
Okay.
one of the largest New Age festivals in the world, if not
Okay.
the largest one in the world. And we would go there and we'd interpret dreams for complete strangers. So we'd set up this booth, the signage called Free Dream Interpretation and Spiritual Readings. And
Right.
people would come in to this festival of celebrating Halloween from all different places in the world, different spiritualities, different faiths, different belief systems, whether it's psychic, New Age, Buddhist, Islam, Jewish, Christianity, and they would come and share their dreams with us. And we'd interpret the dreams and we'd ask this question: what is this a picture of? What is this a picture of? What is this dream communicating to you? They share with
Right.
us their dreams and we'd interpret the dreams. But anyhow,
Mm.
that's really how it began.
Mm. And it's I love the innocence of the beginning, which is just so nice because it really suggests that it's just that it is very innocent and allows things to naturally flow, right? It wasn't forced. Someone didn't try to cram it in that. You got that circle shape, you're banging that square to make it. It wasn't none of that. It just naturally flowed, and it is what it is. Um, I would imagine that there's a lot of work in helping people find their purpose, and when everyone has that North Star that they're working towards, that thing that drives them each and every day, regardless of if they're tired, it motivates them to keep going. Um, but there are a lot of people that struggle to find their purpose. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts as to around, what do you think some of the contributing factors are that are keeping people kind of in that, I don't know, lost or stuck state?
Yes. The stuck state, the being frozen in not knowing our purpose, I think it boils down to, no, I don't think, I believe it boils down to a east is from the west, huge gap in worldview and perspective. We're talking about MPA perspective between the trichotomous worldview and the dichotomous worldview. I'm
Okay.
not sure if you've heard of those phrases and
No, I'd love to,
terminology
I was going to
before.
say, I'm going to dig into that a bit. If you can enlighten us a bit.
Yeah, the trichotomous worldview is comes from this realization, this reality. This is my belief that we are spirit, soul, and body. We're three
Okay.
parts.
Hmm.
That's the trichotomous.
Hmm.
The dichotomous worldview is soul and body, but without the spirit.
Spirit.
And spirit is that secret sauce that I think a lot of people push to the shelf saying, oh, that's hocus pocus, or oh, that's just for the weirdos, or I'm not really a spiritual person. They disregard it as something that's for somebody else
Hmm.
when it's really ingrained in our DNA of design. It's really ingrained in who we are. It's that internal gut feeling. It's that power of the subconscious. In fact, our subconscious is always listening to us every single day,
That's right.
whether we think or not, whether we focus on it or not. If we are speaking positivity, if we're speaking words of life over our
Yep.
subconscious, saying, you know what, I can do this. I can solve this problem. I am going to be able to, I am worthy to receive this job opportunity. I am going to be abundant in my finances. I am abundant in my finances, become a good steward of my finances. When we speak these things on a quantum physical level into the neurological pathways
Yes.
of our subconscious, we awaken our subconscious to listen to that and we train it. If we say, oh, I'm a grasshopper, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. Oh, I'm a failure. Oh, nothing ever works out for me. Everything I turns to ash. Well, what's our subconscious going to do? It's going to manifest that reality
Yes. Yes.
because we've trained it that way. Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. As a man thinks in his heart, as someone who speaks something, that's who we become. What we declare is established because the worlds were framed by the word of God. And he said, in the beginning, there is light. Let there be light. And there is light. By the word of God, the worlds were formed. Faith is a substance, the evidence of the things unseen. We talk about this unseen
Right.
realm. Well,
Right.
everything that we have here in this room, in your room right now, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your odd man jersey, whether it's your paintings on the wall or certificates on the wall or pictures on the wall, and everything in my apartment, everything in your condo was created out of nothing,
Yes.
came from nothing. These things that are physical matter came from nothing. That's just a scientific fact. And so
Yep.
when we circle back to that, I think that's where a lot of people miss the focus that it isn't just the physical, it isn't just the mental, but it is the spiritual. It's coming from that realm of the unseen where we draw inspiration. And I think one of the biggest barriers and obstacles for people to really find their purpose is to limit themselves and limit ourselves to, oh, if it's not within my power, then I can't do it. Well, if we look at life as being something within our own power or somebody else's power, if I look to man, if I look to the president of the United States or the UN or the rich people in Wall Street or in Hollywood or the celebrities, or I look to podcasters or my own strength for my encouragement and my
Hmm.
hope,
Yep.
I'm going to be disappointed because that's a human level.
That's
But
right.
the bigger picture level is God is enthroned over the plans and purposes of man because I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord in Jeremiah, a plan to prosper you, to give you a hope and a future. That's the bigger picture. That's the
Yeah.
trichotomous picture.
Yeah. Um, I really am curious and would love to hear if you perhaps have a story or experience where someone had gone through a breakthrough because of dream interpretation.
Absolutely. Yes, I can definitely expound upon that. Well, you know what? I'm gonna use an example. I'll use a personal example and then I use an
Okay.
example for somebody else.
Okay. Yeah.
So a personal example would actually be a dream of my own that I had when I was in the Philippines, and this was back in 2012, 2011, I think. No, 2010. I went three different times. 2010, I was in the Philippines and I was on a missions ministry trip, public speaking trip in this small little village outside Manila and at a guest home. I was super exhausted, just gotten back from a day of just speaking and just being with orphans and children and adults and leaders. I was exhausted. I was like, it's time to go to bed. So I
Yep.
went to bed. I went to sleep. And I had this vivid dream experience, very short, something that you probably are familiar with, the lucid dreaming, of being
Mm.
aware while you're dreaming. And
Yeah,
our
yeah,
audience is
yeah.
familiar with that as well.
Yep.
And I saw one of my friends, one of my pastor friends from Africa. His name was Weston, and he was standing before me in the dream, as real as you're talking to me right now.
Hmm.
But he looked frail, he looked sickly, and he looked like he had malaria, because I've seen people who have malaria before in the hospitals of Africa, and it's an ugly thing. It's like you just feel that blanket of, oh, this person is really close to death. And I was like, no, that can't happen for Weston. It's not his time yet. So I rebuked death. I was like, no, death cannot have a hold of you. Death cannot hold you. And just spoke the life of God over his life. No, God, you are the author of life and not death, and rebuked that. And I woke up, I was like, wow, I wasn't even thinking of my friend. I was thinking I need to get to sleep and get ready for the next day of whatever speaking engagement I had. A
Hmm.
couple months later, I see my friend Weston at a meeting, and I said, hey, Weston, in April of 2010, were you struggling with your health? I didn't know. And he
Okay.
said, yeah, I had malaria. I was in the hospital
Wow.
and I was close to dying, and I thought I was going to die.
Wow.
And I said, I saw you in one of my dreams, and I knew you were sick at the moment because of what happened in my dream, but now you've confirmed it. And he said, thank you for your prayers. But that was something where
Yes.
someone's life did change, because
Yes.
God looks for somebody to stand in the gap to intercede for other
Yes.
people.
Yes. Yes.
And that for me was a personal example that affected somebody else.
Wow.
And yeah, that to me it's dreams are real. They're not just observational stories.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
deeply impactful. And that's kind of a combination between a dream I had, but something that impacted somebody else through a
Hmm.
dream, pass on down the generational line.
Something that we like to do here, and I'm going to do. I'm going to play a little what we call fearless fast round, rapid fire questions. Caleb, first thing that
Yep.
kind of comes to your mind, before we wrap up here. Nice, easy to kind of get us started. Well, first, I hope you're game for it. You up for it? Yeah, I want to give it a
Yeah,
shot.
I'm up for it. Let's go. Let's go.
Something nice and easy. Early bird or night owl?
I'm gonna be early bird.
Okay. Is there a piece of advice or wisdom that you live by?
Piece of advice and wisdom that I would live by is don't take yourself too seriously.
Mm. First thing you do every morning.
Ooh, I would say I just take a deep breath, and I'm thankful for another day, and that the Spirit of God has infused me with life.
Is there a place on earth, and you're certainly well traveled, but is there a place on earth that unlocks your creativity?
Hmm. I would say whenever I cross over into the United States, actually, it's I always joke about this with my family, and we talk about it together, and we all feel the similar way. And that is, I feel more creative and that liberty and more just openness when I cross over the border from Canada to the United States. I don't know why, but it just
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Okay. Most surprising place that you've ever spoken at?
I would say probably to the Maasai people in Tanzania, to some of the unreached villages that have never seen a white person before, and to speak to a bunch of them that were during 2010, during the South Africa World
Mm.
Cup of soccer, football, as the Europeans
Yeah.
like to call it. But the Maasai, all in their outfits and their pierced ears and their spears and their mud huts. But in that place that I spoke in, they had a big screen, 35-inch Samsung TV, but everything else was primitive. But that was probably the most surprising place I
I
got to
love it.
speak in.
Well, you got to watch it in style, man. Come on now, right?
That's right.
So, name one thing that most people wouldn't guess about you.
Hmm. I have a stuffed animal collection of 125 stuffed animals.
Wow, impressive. Boldest thing that you've done this year.
I would say embracing this journey of really being my own editor and YouTube content creator, and just hitting the ground running with creating my own online content and just going after it, and just starting small and not being too concerned about having to get the numbers or tons of views, but really just beginning with baby steps and enjoying the workshop, enjoying the process, but being my own content creator and just going past, whatever people think is whatever people think. And, I'm not afraid of rejection. And that's something that I've lived with my whole life, is just going past what people think and just doing what I'm supposed to do. My DNA of design, YouTube content creation.
The most audacious thing you've ever done?
I would say the most audacious thing that I've ever done is probably would be going into going into public speaking to Africa when I was 18 years old, as we referenced earlier, in the
Mm,
Philippines, and spending 6 or 7 different voyages. I think it's 6 or 7, East Africa, self-funded, going into some of the most unreached and dangerous places in the world, in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and the Philippines, and trusting that God has my back, that Jesus has my back, that I'm protected, that I walk with heavenly host of angels, and I'm protected by God in these dangerous places. That's the most audacious thing I've done, is to go
wow.
off the beaten path and bring my message. No matter how dangerous, the light needs to shine in the darkness.
I love it. I love it. What the last thing I want to ask is, and I want to ask you is, if your younger self could ask your older self a question, what do you think it would be? And then conversely, as your younger self, what advice would you give to as an older self? What would you get advice would you give to your younger self? So that conversation, what would that look like?
Yeah. So younger self, what would I say to my older self? And the older self, what would I say to my younger self? Is
Yeah,
that kind of what you're asking?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Younger self, what I would say to my older self is take your time. Don't don't really be concerned of how quickly you get somewhere, and just really be content with the state that you're in. Be joyful, because I think I believe when we're younger, the world is such a simpler place, which is why Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven. And to
Mm,
enjoy the process, enjoy now, and not be concerned about too overly concerned, because we have to be structured and planned, but don't be overly concerned of having to have everything in bullet point form.
yeah,
I
yeah.
would say just have that zest and that joy. Stay in the joy,
Yes,
and don't be too over concerned about having to adult.
yes.
Don't be too invested in adulting, because it can
Right.
rob us of the joy of having that childlike joy, young in heart and always young, no matter what our age is. Conversely, when I'm older, looking at as a younger self, I
Yeah.
would say that seasons have different timestamps on them. And what
Mm,
I mean by that is, a season doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be over after a few months or a year, but a season could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, a season of character development. That character development is something that takes time. It takes
mm.
time, and not to be overly concerned about, oh, well, I haven't hit this personal goal. I haven't hit that social goal. I haven't hit
Yep.
this relational goal. I haven't hit this financial goal. I haven't hit that goal. To not be overly concerned about trying to goal chase, of having to go through the structure, because that's the conformity, peer pressure structure that the world tries to put on us when
Right.
we progress as a young person through school and through our first job and through our first relationships. Those things, there's that peer pressure of having to be the Burger King arrived. I got my burger now. I got my Happy Meal now. I got my drink now. I got
Yep.
everything now. But just to take time, that
Fine.
seasons, they're segments, and they look different to every single person. And if different season produces different timestamps.
I love it. I do. I do. Caleb, I gotta tell you, I've really, really enjoy our time together. I think I oftentimes when I at end of these conversations, I kind of reflect and think about what we have this conversation about, and I think for me, what stands out is the passion, commitment you have to the work that you do. That's like it's yelling and screaming at me loud and clear, and I think that's such a beautiful thing, because that really speaks to just your commitment to your work. And so congratulations for discovering and uncovering and discovering that, and then staying on that path to follow your own North Star. It's something that I think that many don't have that and don't know that. And so part of your work is empowering people and uplifting them and helping them to get on that path. I think is an absolutely a beautiful, beautiful thing. For listeners that wanted to connect with you directly, learn more about your work, where could we send them?
Well, listeners, right now, if you've enjoyed this conversation with myself and Audley, and you're like, I want to hear more what Caleb Matthews is up to, what content he's creating, you heard a little bit about my YouTube journey that I've started this year, built from the 20 years of public speaking background. First of all, YouTube. I want you to stop what you're doing right now if you're listening to this podcast on Audley's amazing Audacious Living podcast, and you're like, I want to follow Caleb more. Go to youtube.com/@the Seelink. So SEELINK. And that is my YouTube channel where I have weekly motivational content of seeing the link of the purpose to which you've been created, the DNA of your design, learning from history, learning from the early years of entrepreneurship, the I of R principle, the I of renovation. And then, of course, from history, as well as what I'm really diving into the different topics. So YouTube channel is @the Seelink. Hit subscribe. I would love to have you join me on the journey. It's all motivational free content. There's no cost whatsoever to the content that I'm posting there on those channels, at least for the time being. And then my website, www.calebmatthews.net. That's my Seelink website, where I've got a whole archive trove of my guest speaking experiences, including Audley's. I'm going to be posting as soon as this one comes out on there to feature the podcast that I'm on, because without these podcasts that I appear on, I can't spread my message the way I am. I will eventually have my own podcast that I am in the beta testing of all the technology before I launch my own. That's coming in the months to come. Nice. Of course, it'll be called the Seelink, but that's my website. And then Instagram, Caleb on the Runway. That's my Instagram channel from my early years of modeling years. I was a fashion runway model and editorial photo shoot model. And that's my Instagram page. And of course, Twitter, Caleb Matthews without the E. So Caleb Matthews without the E. And then, of course, my itinerant oasis, which I'm calling everyone from right now, www.theitinerantoasis.com. That's where you can book your stay at my Airbnb/workspace, with all the gadgets and gizmos and gear and the technology, everything that you need. That's a mouthful. But the main thing I want to leave our audience with today is pursue the DNA of your design. Pursue that Seelink of your design. Reach the purpose to which you've been created by God, because every person on this planet, from those of you who are listening from coast to coast, from west to east, from north to south, from the United States and Canada and Mexico, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in Australia, and all the nations of the world, no matter you're in your room, in your car, on the public transit, sitting in the park, listening to this podcast, you were born for such a time as this in history. Not 100 years ago, not 1,000 years ago, not 1,000 years to come. You are alive at this time in history to see that link, your individual link in the night season and what God's speaking to you in the daytime. You will reach the purpose to which you've been created. I am convinced of that. And when you speak to your subconscious, when you speak to your spirit man, spirit woman, say, rise up and embrace my DNA of design, then you're going to be able to be a world changer. You are a world changer.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
Caleb, this is truly, truly awesome. I thank you again for this. Again, like I said, congratulations. I appreciate the time, and thanks for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Thank you, Audley. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, welcome back. And I've got to say, that moment when Caleb talked about practicing public speaking in front of his stuffed animals before speaking in Africa definitely caught me off guard. All 125 of them in his collection. But listen, if you're someone who's trying to move forward in life with more courage, clarity, and confidence, today's conversation is a reminder that purpose is not always something you instantly discover. Sometimes it's something that gets revealed as you keep showing up and keep growing and keep trusting the process. What really stayed with me was Caleb's perspective on character. That idea that character comes before gifting is such an important reminder, especially in a world that pushes us to chase invisibility before foundation. And I also appreciate his thoughts on how our experiences shape us, refine us, and often prepare us to help someone else. Sometimes the strongest path forward begins with practicing your piece. It's time for an audacious insight, a quick look at something happening in the world that reflects the power of bold thinking and intentional action. When Simone Biles returned at the Paris 2024 Olympics after stepping away in Tokyo to protect her mental health, she showed the world that strength is not just about pushing harder, but about honoring what you need so you can come back whole. Her comeback helped reframe resilience as something rooted not only in performance, but in self-awareness, boundaries, and healing. And that's the lesson. Real courage is not losing yourself to prove something. It's knowing yourself well enough to move with wisdom. Make sure you connect with Caleb Matthews directly. He's doing some really unique work around purpose, dream interpretation, spiritual insight, and personal growth. You can find him at calebmatthews.net. On YouTube, he's at The C Link, and on Instagram, Caleb on the Runway. We'll include those links in the show notes so you can check them out. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And while you're at it, make sure you follow the podcast and take a moment to leave a review. It helps us to continue bringing these kinds of meaningful conversations to more people. Until next time, live life audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion. My words got power, my thoughts have action. Motivation, stay gracious. That's greatness, be audacious.